Which drugs help against COVID-19? It's the top goal for medical researchers around the world. We have already developed several effective vaccines, but a cure has not yet been found. Why is it so difficult? So far, doctors have tried drugs that have already been used for other viral diseases like HIV, Ebola, SARS, and influenza. Sometimes they can help, but they are not the breakthrough medical experts are hoping for. What we do know is that how well a drug works depends above all on when it is administered. In the early stage, when the virus enters the body and multiplies, or a later phase when the body reacts with inflammation and immune defenses.
It is problematic because if you have a patient, you don't really know what to do, and everybody tries the best, and they observe the patient and they observe the symptoms, but there is no standard recommendation so far.
Hospitals around the world are gaining experience with COVID-19, and they're gathering data in the hope that it'll soon be possible to do more than just protect healthy people with a vaccination. Hello and welcome to your COVID-19 special. I'm Chris Colbert in Berlin. Vaccination programs around the world are the strongest defense against the spread of the coronavirus. But treating patients who have fallen ill has been a lot more challenging. Some doctors have used existing drugs against COVID-19, but the medical evidence of effectiveness is often lacking. Another possibility is to use antibodies. Japan's Chugai Pharmaceuticals has applied for regulatory approval of a coronavirus treatment that combines two antibodies. It follows trials in Japan. Earlier, I spoke to Clemens Wendtner, head of the Schwabing clinic in Munich. And before we talked about the current treatment of COVID-19 cases, I asked him what it was like handling Germany's first coronavirus patient almost 1.5 years ago.
Actually, patient zero was without any excitement. So we just did what any doctor would have done. So the patient got a little bit oxygen, a little bit inhalation, not even a real infusion. So at this moment, we just used supportive care in the best sense, but did not treat this patient in a specific way. Actually, the disease weaned off by itself after a couple of weeks.
And looking at how you treat patients today with COVID-19 infections, how has it changed?
I think we have made some progress based on clinical trials. We also participated. So the one thing is, in the early phase of the COVID-19 disease, you can interact by using drugs like remdesivir, but we also have the neutralizing antibodies, so spike-directed antibodies, like the famous Dragon-CoV-2. Donald Trump got it. And in the later phase of the disease, so second week and further on, the principle is to suppress the inflammation. So that's the reason, or that's actually the prime time for steroids, the prime time for IL-6 antibodies, tocilizumab, for example, and there are new developments like GM-CSF antibodies, et cetera, et cetera. So you see the armamentarium is broadened, and but still some homework to be done, not the cure for every patient at this point.
Now, on that antibody treatment, a company in Japan says it applied for regulatory approval for an antibody treatment for COVID-19. Is this approach the most promising one?
I think in pandemic times, you have to react in a very timely and quick manner. So I think the approach that has been used in Germany, but also in the US, was more efficient. So we have access to these antibodies without an official label, because this will take months and sometimes also years. But you don't have time to wait. So we are just using these antibodies without label. We tell patients about this, but we have some data from trials that they can even reduce mortality. So that's reason enough for us to apply these new drugs.
Now, COVID patients have been treated with drugs for other viral diseases. What can we draw from that?
Actually, we also did this in the first few weeks, so typically HIV drugs, etc. I mean, that's a trial and error in the first days of this pandemic time. But actually, we discarded these drugs because we learned very quickly that they have more side effects than effects. And when you're trained as a physician, as a physician also participating in clinical trials, you know what you have to do. And so this is also the story here, you know, that we didn't use HIV drugs anymore. But sometimes you just take the stuff that's at the bench if you don't have a lot of things to offer. And this is how it happened also in this pandemic.
Now, if the side effects outweigh the actual benefits, how far along are we then when it comes to developing a medical cure for COVID-19?
I mean, cure is a big word for COVID-19. I think we can help patients in a very early phase of the disease. The problem is when the patient comes to the emergency room after 2 or 3 weeks after symptom onset. So these are the real heavy cases, and sometimes even we are not able to help young people. I think still a long path to go. We have learned a lot of things about vaccination, but the medical treatment is still, let's put it this way, under development. And we and others, we are actively participating for this reason in clinical trials using new drugs for this disease.
Meanwhile, fewer very old patients are being hospitalized. How does that change the work of the doctors working in the hospitals?
In the second and third wave of the pandemic, we had a lot of elderly patients in our hospital. So the point was that we also had a high fatality rate because many of these elderly ones, 80 and above, didn't want to go on the ICU. Now we have few patients, but the majority is quite young. So we do everything for them. And but we have also a non-COVID wave. Let's put it this way. We have 2 more patients that have postponed their surgery, etc. So still a lot of things to be done in the clinics. And let's hope that the Delta wave will not present us many young patients that we have to treat in the clinics, in the ICU wards.
Clemens, if you had one wish that would improve the treatment of COVID patients, what would that wish be?
The wish would be that there is the magic pill, so an oral agent that can be used by the infected people before the disease really starts to make complications. So the pill, the anti-COVID pill that can be taken at home, this would be my wish for the future infected patients with COVID-19.
Let's see how long it takes until we have that pill. Clemens Wendtner, head of the Schwabing Clinic in Munich, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
While research for a drug to help COVID-19 patients continues, several vaccines have already been developed to prevent people from catching the coronavirus. Despite high effectiveness, people still have questions about the jab, like the following one for our science correspondent, Derek Williams.
Are there any ways to mitigate your chance of developing a thrombosis if you're vaccinated with AstraZeneca?
I'm going to start this answer by saying something I've already said many times before, which is that both trials and hundreds of millions of recipients show the AstraZeneca vaccine is highly effective at preventing future infection with COVID-19. And the chances of developing the blood clots that have been associated with the vaccine are extremely rare. The exact numbers are kind of hard to interpret, but the European Medicines Agency says that over the course of both doses, about 1 recipient in 100,000 develops the side effect. So it's a very uncommon occurrence. That chance is so much smaller than the chance of a serious outcome if you contract COVID-19, certainly for older people, that there's a very clear benefit in getting the AstraZeneca vaccine. Because vaccine-induced thrombosis is so rare, we're still learning about it, but we think we've figured out the mechanisms that cause it. And that, coupled with simple awareness, is now playing a big role in reducing the dangers for those who do develop the condition, because it can be treated if doctors recognize it quickly. Symptoms of it can include severe headaches or blurred vision, persistent pain in an extremity or in the abdomen, shortness of breath, or the development of unexplained bruising around the injection site. And those symptoms usually occur between 4 and 30 days after vaccination. I couldn't find any advice about how to mitigate your chances of developing the rare side effect, which there's no surprise there, since we're still unable to predict even who might be vulnerable. But being aware that a thrombosis can occur and vigilant about how it presents, that can go a long way towards helping you if you turn out to be one of the very few people who are affected.